that's one of our goals, and one of the things that I think we've been able to be successful is because we take a long-term view. We want to be a long-term customer. Just like our manufacturers, we have companies that, like I said, we've had for 61 years. We have ones for 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. And our goal is to develop these long-term relationships. And the only way you can do it is by bringing value and being ethical on how you do your business.
Thanks for joining for another episode of Inspiring Innovation. And we talk about all things manufacturing here, and we're really excited to have today's guest, Steve Fisher. So Steve Fisher worked his way up into ownership of Peterson Enterprises, and they are a manufacturer's rep agency, and they have been really a great partner to Polo Custom Products for many years now. I'm so excited to hear from Steve today. I have tremendous respect for all that he's done with Polo, all that he's done in his career. He's been in manufacturing since, I think, before I was born, Steve. So thank you so much.
Possible, Sean. I'm an old dog.
No, I value, all the knowledge and experience and interactions that you've had in our sectors and in manufacturing for your career. So thank you so much for joining the podcast today. And can you tell us a little bit about Peterson and what manufacturers reps do, how you provide Polo to principals like us and to customers like the medical OEMs and the industrial OEMs that we work with?
Sure. Now, our firm started in Minneapolis. My father-in-law started in 1965. So this is going into our 61st year. Polo has us by a couple years in business, but also is a family-owned, privately held group. Mm-hmm. And we started the business, or I should say my father-in-law, Bob Peterson, started it to represent manufacturing firms. And initially, the focus of our business was pretty heavily geared in towards companies in our states in the upper Midwest, that I call the frozen tundra. And so we did a lot of industrial work, castings, machining, injection molding. And what we did from his perspective was provide tremendous value in terms of being able to go into a customer and find out what they really needed, and then seeing if our portfolio of companies had some technology or manufacturing expertise that would enable us to be of service to them. Mm-hmm. And the goal when he started the business is that we wanted not to have a transactional business, but a relational business. Mm-hmm. And we've had the good fortune both in two areas. One is in terms of companies that we've represented. We have one firm in our group that I just had lunch with the owner yesterday, and we've represented them for 61 years. That's a long relational connection, and you both have to bring value to have something go that far. And many of our companies are I would say probably the most salient features. The vast majority are privately held, family-owned businesses. We do have some that have been acquired by larger entities where we represent divisions of multi-billion-dollar larger conglomerates, but I would say the vast majority of our manufacturing firms kind of fit within the range in size from 10 million in sales to $500 million in sales. And our goal is to become their not only their eyes and ears on the ground, but the solution providers to the customers and the territories that we had. I joined my father-in-law in 1980, and out of school, and originally I was going to be a lawyer, and he wanted me to go into his firm because he and I had worked on a lot of projects where he thought I had some pretty good mechanical aptitude. And I was only going to work a year with him and then go on to graduate school, and that was 46 years ago. So one of those stories of the road not taken and the road taken. Yeah. And it's turned out to be a really fulfilling career, and have tremendously enjoyed working not only with our customers but our manufacturers. So our goal is to go in, and we represent manufacturing firms and are their sales force, and not only just sales force to sell, but also to service and to provide technical solutions into our customers. And we have expanded over the years. Initially, like I said, we were in the industrial side. Being in Minneapolis, we had some of the largest med tech companies in the area. And so 34 years ago, when I bought out my father-in-law, along with my sister-in-law, who's an accountant, I made a very conscious decision for our group that we would also expand into the medical device and diagnostic and related industries. And so as that has evolved over the last 34 years, I would say we have really changed the portfolio of our work, where the medical device and pharmaceutical and device delivery groups have become our largest single customer base. And what we do is go in and we do a combination of, we use all the latest technologies of reaching out to our customers today, whether it be, via LinkedIn or Teams meetings or whatever. But a key thing is we go and visit our customers on the ground. Mm-hmm. And we go into their manufacturing plants. We walk the floors with their supply chain people and their engineers. We work in early involvement with DFM. And kind of the unique value that we've been able to bring is that since we have a broad range of different technologies, we can look at a part and we can try to match it with one of our diverse manufacturing companies and say, you may have looked at this part as a machine part, but we can convert it to a cast part or a metal injection molded part or a amorphous metal part or something of that nature. So what we are is, and I would say it was an interesting thing, I was invited to a multi-billion-dollar company to go into one of their Kaizen events that they had internally this past quarter. And one of the head engineers met with me and he said, Steve, we've never invited anybody outside of our company to come in and be in an internal Kaizen. But you have dealt with us for over 30 years. You're a major supplier, but you supply multiple components. And when we had a launch product that was, they had spent almost $500 million developing, they had a series of components that nobody could produce for them. And so they called me up and they said, Steve, we got a big problem. And I talked to them about one of our companies and they said, you have told us you have this company that really has some great technologies. Can they help us out? Mm-hmm. And we worked for 6 weeks straight over weekends, and we were able to develop that particular product component so they could launch the part. And he told me subsequently, he said, we're inviting you to Kaizen because you and your companies provide solutions and help us to be successful. And so that's one of our goals, and one of the things that I think we've been able to be successful is because we take a long-term view. We want to be a long-term customer. Just like our manufacturers, we have companies that, like I said, we've had for 61 years. We have ones for 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. And our goal is to develop these long-term relationships. And the only way you can do it is by bringing value and being ethical on how you do your business.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you guys have been great partners. And that's really great to hear that you're invited in on the Kaizen events and providing solutions to these companies, and just hearing, these family-owned small businesses that really have a lot of purpose, provide a lot of jobs across the country, and are serving, the products of tomorrow. I appreciate hearing all that. You guys have been a phenomenal partner. Can I ask you, just kind of from the ground level, if somebody comes in with an RFQ, how do you guys maintain the relationship throughout the process and stay involved with that customer, even for, the next generation of launches that come from that product line?
Well, that's a great question, Sean. And, I think primarily from the front end of it, our group, and we have a very interesting mixture between people that have extremely technical backgrounds, engineering backgrounds, but also business backgrounds. And so our particular way that we approach customers or RFQs is, first, a lot of times companies send the RFQs into us directly. And they say, hey, do you have, it's very typical that companies will say, look, we know you have a portfolio of companies, and we have associates with Peterson throughout the country. We have a dozen fellows that are working in particularly all the key med tech areas in the country. And so they'll send in RFQs and say, look, do you have one of your companies that you think that would fit? Now, there are certain ones where they say, this is a great example. This is a good fit for Polo. It's a retrieval bag. Please, send it to Polo. But it's not atypical that they'll send in an RFQ. And then we try to vet in the front end of it, make sure it's a good fit, for example, for Polo with the materials, the volumes, what their market space is that they want to go to. Since we have manufacturing partners throughout the world, not just North America, we have multiple options, and Polo is a great example of that, where we have 500, just under 500 people through our 3 domestic manufacturing operations. We have facilities in the Caribbean and also in Asia. So what we would do is we would take that RFQ and present it into Polo. And oftentimes RFQs don't have all the right information. They don't have, what is the projected long-term volume? They might have startup volumes and need prototypes, and you need to identify that, how fast you need it. What is your program launch date that you need product for? And then secondly, what are you planning to do year 2, 3, or 5, or what's the longevity of this particular product? Because that really drives into where your companies like Polo would put it in a manufacturing facility that would fit the volumes, but also the long-term impact, and what are their budgetary numbers that they need to hit to make this product successful. Mm-hmm. So we send the RFQ in, we work with the engineers, and oftentimes we have to get additional information. And there's a lot of back and forth between Polo's engineering group and development group and product design developers that we have down in Monticello. And we try to work together hand in hand. And then oftentimes, the next step is to have a visit. And whether we bring engineers in from Polo or development people from Polo or go down to our plant facilities, we like to go alongside and be there, so we're conversant on what are the things, what are the opportunities that really need to be addressed. The other thing is to find out the nuances when you see people face to face. You can't, you can do a lot of Teams meetings, and it's a great tool. We all used it in COVID successfully, but to be able to go face to face and look at people and understand what is your program, what are your program needs, and do that alongside, for example, in Polo's case, our development engineering people. And once that's done, our companies provide a bid package, and we go back to our customer and work, with our Polo account representative and say, is our proposal acceptable? Are we within your parameters of your cost budgets, your delivery budgets? And and there are times where they say, fantastic, we're gonna work forward. I was just in a customer yesterday with one of the Polo folks where they had a development project. The project came out of the manufacturing was in Minnesota. The project lead that we were dealing with was in Spain, and his boss was in Ireland. So we interacted with all those different people. And Polo brought in, we had a design engineering group, DFM, meeting with them ahead of time before we even gotten an order. And we offered them different material scenarios and made samples. And Polo brought up the samples. We met with them yesterday, literally, and walked through. And they're a very large medical manufacturer. And the engineering gentleman we were dealing with was, quite frankly, he was thrilled. He said, man, this is fantastic. He said, I've got prototypes from my lab, I can take to my people. We can get the voice of the customer back and see what they like. And then, it's probably going to be a year and a half before this goes to production. Yep. So in this case, we do prototype orders. And then if they tell us our proposal is successful, we follow through in manufacturing, getting all whether it's an 𝐒𝐭𝐞 PQ that needs to be done for medical or a first article or a PPAP if it's automotive. We work with our quality people and our design development people at Polo to make sure that these samples and these initial parts get through. And then as we go into production, we go in and make sure how we package the products, how is it working, and then want to even go into the customer's line position to see, how can we maybe do a little different packaging so it's easier for the operators to put in. And I think that's where, I'll use Polo as a great example. They're one of our key manufacturers that we have the talented people that can walk it all the way through. So we're not just, we quote, hopefully we get the order, we get paid and we walk away. This is a long-term relationship because, as you noted, Sean, oftentimes there's secondary platforms that come in or the initial program or design that they come forth, they go out to the market space and either maybe a competitor has brought in a new product that added some features that they want to add into their product, or there's a technology shift. So you have to constantly be in contact with the customer on that program to make sure, is there a new platform coming? Is there things we can enhance? We've had programs that started out low volume hand assembly, and then we went to semi-automated assembly, and then built high volume automated assembly. And we walk alongside them along with Polo.
Yeah, that's a great transition into my next question, which is you guys have had tons of success with Polo and in the medical OEM space. And could you walk us through one of those successes from the very beginning of, where the contact was made to a product that ended up being a very high volume run? Can you kind of walk us through that journey and how that happened and how Peterson played a massive role in finding that business and being great partners all throughout?
Sure.
But before we get into that, this podcast is brought to you by Polo Custom Products. We are a custom manufacturer that specializes in sewing, sealing, and thermoforming. We work with project engineers, sourcing professionals, and buyers to design, engineer, and manufacture products that cannot afford to fail. If you're interested in working with us, visit our website at www.polocustomproducts.com and fill out a request for quote form. Now, back to the show.
Everybody's goal is that you get a unicorn program that turns out to be a tremendous success for not only your customer, but also your manufacturing partner like Polo. And, one of the things projects that come to mind is one of our really good associates down in Chicago had a customer, an engineer that moved from a company that he had success with, not with Polo, but with other products he had sold them. And he went to a new large med device manufacturer. And they had a development project that they were trying to put together. And there were some real challenging technical items as they were trying to do this complete, medical device assembly. And so he called Mark up, our fellow down in Chicago, and said, hey, look, I have this program. Why don't you come in and talk to me? So when he received the program, he talked to me and said, hey, look, this looks like to be a good potential opportunity for Polo. And it was, even a further design development where it's going to be a complete design development package and ship. So I went down there with him to the customer, and I give the great credit to one of our compatriots, Lynn Lemke, who's one of Polo's top medical individuals, and Lynn and our associate down there and I went and met with the customer, and they had some initial things. Well, we're not quite sure, if this is a good product mix for you, and then how do we know that you're going to keep this IP all tight together? And we worked through those things, and after I explained to her that between Peterson and Polo, we've worked with multiple different companies and always have a firewall on IP. And that's when the med device industry, that is extremely important, that they know if they're talking to you about a new product that's going to be potentially revolutionary to the space, they want to make sure your IP is protected. So therefore, we went forward and started doing initial development. And this is where our chief operating officer, Brian at Polo, is just a fantastic technical guy. He's probably one of the best RF welding experts and impulse welding experts in the country. And he was able to utilize some of his technology expertise as we helped them develop the product and help them get to a solution that would solve some pretty thorny technical issues. And I would say the initial design development was from our customer, but without the Polo interaction, in particular Brian and his engineering group, came up with some fantastic ideas. And so we did prototypes and we did initial hand production. And as it went out and they did the voice of the customer and looked at what they were doing, I remember going into their lab once and seeing this device being attached to a dummy. And I thought to myself, I never thought I would have gone in at the level where we were seeing a medical device and all the testing they had done to it. But it was a very collaborative item where we started low volume production. We went into semi-automated production, and then as their business just boomed through the market acceptance, they came to Polo and they said, look, we need you to expand your production. And the numbers they first gave us were, modest. It was going to be a nice program. This turned out to be an extremely large program. And by the time Polo finished, we had it being run in four or five of our different manufacturing operations, including we took it for cost areas where we did it domestically, and we also did it over internationally. And so that was a great example of Polo listening to what the customer needs, and we never missed one delivery requirement that they had. And we even developed even further automation that we offered into them as that product line developed. But it was a great example of, as this product exploded in volume, they knew they could always count on Polo. And we never said, look, we don't think we can meet what you need. We asked, what do you need? And got to be one of the largest programs Polo has ever produced. Extremely successful for our customer, but it was a great example of how we scaled up and had scalability depending on what they needed, and we always provided a solution for them in a particular market space that if they wouldn't have had that volume upsurge capability, they would have lost great opportunities for markets. So that's a good story, and I think it's a good example of working together, and credit was due in great part to our associate down in Chicago, Lynn, Brian and his group, and the entire team at Polo.
Well, thanks. And yeah, you all did a fantastic job throughout, and were so fun to work with. And that is a really fun success story with a large medical OEM, one of the most successful product launches that really scaled faster than they said anything else in their company's history. To keep that off a back order was a tremendous effort by a lot of people, and a great partnership, great success story, and something we're eager to replicate again with all these great opportunities. We're working with Peterson in the pipeline. You've got a great team, and so we've enjoyed meeting with them. We enjoy going to trade shows with you, and I know that you mentioned you've represented tons of different manufacturers over the years. You've got very long-term partnerships. What's stuck out to you about the partnership you've had with Polo? What have we done, or what differentiates us as a partner?
No, that's really, once again, I think a really good question. I think looking at Polo, for us when we took the Polo line on probably 10 years ago, it came through one of my other really good friends out on the East Coast that represented Polo. We were at a medical show, and he said, "Steve, I got to go introduce you to these folks that sew and seal." And, traditionally, we were making parts for, pacemakers, defibrillators, spinal products, robotic surgical products. And I thought, what are we going to do with sewing and sealing? I can't sew very well. My wife would attest to that. So I walked over there and walked over to the booth. And the first thing that impressed me was the people in the Polo group. They were just really extremely technical, very good, explained how their products fit into the potential niche in the medical device industry, and as well as the industrial, the safety industry, and things like that could fit into our Peterson group. And so first and foremost, what impressed me was the people. And the other thing was the breadth of customers that they were already servicing that were, what I would say marquee names in the marketplace, and potentially what they needed was more interaction with all the various different, especially the startup medical companies as well as the larger OEMs. And you have to go out and see these people face to face. So people was number one. Secondly was technology. I went down to their facilities and saw what they were doing with RF welding and impulse welding and sewing. And you think a lot of the sewing is on the other side of the pond, and we at Polo have relationships over there. But just being able to also have that domestic capability to be able to sew, seal, and deliver products fast was really a tremendous value for us. When I went down to the Monticello facility and went into their design engineering, and they have textile engineers that are really creative people. And I walked in, and there's a board of all these different types of material swatches and different latches and different stitches and all these types of materials. And you went in there, it was like going into a workshop that had all sorts, or a lab, I should say, facilities to test. I was impressed, they had 1345 from a medical, which is important for all our manufacturers. But that level of what can we do to solve a customer's problem? What can we do to give them options that are going to be cost effective, but also be successful in launching their products? So the fact also that they were a family business, a family-owned business, multiple generations, and that they were committed to their community. And I looked at a lot of times people don't look at this, but I looked at the philanthropic impact that Polo Custom Products had, not only in Topeka, Kansas, but also in Monticello and our facilities in Mississippi. I looked at how they treated their people. They invested in local philanthropic organizations, and that aligned with our value system at Peterson. And, we're all here to make money. It's very important. That's why we get up in the mornings to provide for our families. But the fact to be able to give back to their community. And I saw that in Polo, and that was another thing that really impressed me. That was different.
I couldn't agree more, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think we've got very visionary founders that are very generous and, have started a lot. They've started a independent school in our community that my daughter goes to. I've actually been able to get involved on the fundraising and board aspects of that independent school that shouldn't even exist in a community the size of Topeka, Kansas. And they've also helped start the Kansas Discovery Center, and they support so many different nonprofits and events in our community. And in the other locations, there's so many fundraisers for our associates who have fallen ill or fallen on hard times, and ways that they support each other and really just stand out and support their communities. So it's I appreciate you bringing up the values that our company brings to the table and sharing that over at Peterson. So I want to add too, I want to shift gears here again and go back to something you mentioned, which is, somebody that you've worked with that may be new to Polo. When you introduce them to Polo, how do you establish trust quickly, and what tends to resonate about Polo to engineers and to designers and things like that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that most all of our customers are looking today is they're looking for a manufacturing partner. And I say partner in a strong sense, because there are customers out there that strictly have a transactional viewpoint towards life, and they'll send a quote and whatever comes in, they'll go. But the ones that are really successful, and I think that's why also we've had great success in the med device area. You have to be cost competitive in the med device area today. 20 years ago, if you could just make really good parts, that was good. But now you have to be cost competitive. And the way you're cost competitive is to have innovative solutions. And I always tell people the strength of Polo, going back, is our people, but it's our technical people. It's also our people you deal with day to day, but it's our technical group, in particular down in Monticello, where they really excel in coming up with different material solutions and different ways to sew or seal. Or the other thing we've done a lot more lately is, if you send us a part, we say, well, what's the next level of assembly that goes into that part? And we perhaps can provide a cost-effective solution, not only to make the one component you want, but put an injection molded part around it, or put another assembly, attach a valve, a seal, or different things like that to it to make it a more complete product that we can ship in. But that goes back to our technical expertise. And the designers we have are really second to none. There's a lot of people that go to school in the engineering fields, and they're great in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, fluidics, and what have you. There's not as many have a background in say, for example, textiles or films. And with the level of knowledge, like I just had yesterday in my meeting with our customer that we were doing samples I referred to before, we were talking about whether you had a TPU or a TPE, or how thick the material was, or what was was there fabric backing on it, or how we could provide it. And it was a fascinating discussion with that engineer, because we provided three different materials and two different types of geometries of parts. And he put them into their initial assemblies and hand did it in his own lab. And he said, well, this is great. Now I can actually look at all these different materials, look at how they function in the application. And once again, having a niche like Polo in textiles and films and sealing and sewing, that's not something that there's a tremendous amount of expertise in the engineering marketplace for many of our customers. So they can come alongside Polo and we can help them be successful, because ultimately, the customer has to choose the material. Ultimately, the customer has to okay the process. But if we can help them reach that success state by providing good options for them to evaluate and then put it on their print and go forward, that's one of the things that really differentiates Polo from a lot of companies. The other thing is there's people in our space that are really big into, say, for example, automotive. And we've done things that relate into automotive, but they do huge volumes. And you're doing sewing for the inside of an automobile or a truck or something like that. And being able to work in that prototype, low volume development in the med device area, you have a lot of startups. We're dealing with a company right now, and they have a really innovative product for radiological applications. And because we have multiple companies, we were working on a composite molded part with them. And then they said they needed a fabric around it. So we were able to bring Polo in to solve the problem to go around some of their other device components. And that's another example of where we can cross-utilize and cross-leverage. We go in for one technology, we help them with another one. But having that expertise in materials, material science, and the actual processing, I think is really a great value proposition for Polo.
100%. I think you hit the nail on the head. And when we can get an engineer and customer out to our Monticello facility where our product development team resides, we get a lot of feedback of, man, I got more done in 3 hours here than I've, been able to get done in 3 weeks of isolation in my lab back at my office. And I think that just speaks to the material library and the expertise and our capabilities that our customers can lean on for solutions they hadn't even considered, and some potential real cost savings too. When we ask a question, does this corner need to be shaped like this, or can we do that? And really bring some examples that from a DFM standpoint can allow the manufacturing to be much more efficient. So really great examples. And something you talk about a lot, Steve, is people and relationships. And we do find ways to provide our customers value, but at the end of the day, it is a business where people are working with people and making decisions based off that. And so I wondered if you could tell any story that might be meaningful to you about relationships that you've built with customers over the years.
Yeah, I still, with all the various different literature out there, and then also we all look at the technologies with AI and digital platforms and how you can do research and get information. I think I don't know if it's an original thing, but I've coined the word with our fellows and ladies, the Google jungle, because you can go online and you can query for manufacturers of XYZ, and you get a whole list. And what you don't know is the list of a company that starts out at the top or the first thing. Are they the one that paid the most to get there for the clicks, or do they have the best IT people that know how to get themselves up to the pyramid of, if there's 100 different potential suppliers for it, who gets to your list? And they've done a lot of research that most people don't get past the first list or two or screens of who to look at, and they might not be going to the right solution. So we think in our group, and we've got great associates. Our folks at Peterson, once again, have a lot of longevity. I just had one fellow retire over 40 years. We've got lots of folks that have many, many, many years of experience. And then we have young guys and that are really good technical engineers and good business folks. But what we've always stressed is that we want customers for life. And that's a relational connection. And you get customers for life when you do things that people value and remember. And one story I could give for one of our long-term customers. When I was a young fellow, I was supplying castings into a customer, and they got a shipment of castings, and there were 4 bolt holes it was an investment casting, and there were 4 bolt holes, and they picked the part out, and most good QA folks can reach into a box and they know how to pick out the part that maybe is not conforming. And they put a plug gauge in, and one of them didn't fit. There was what's called a random positive. So they called me up and they said, hey, we have a shipment and we have to get these parts moved into production. We need them. And it was like 4:00 in the afternoon. And we need these 1,000 castings to be fixed by tomorrow morning at 7:00 when we open up. So I said, okay. I said, I'll work on it. So I went home, got a pair of jeans on and a t-shirt, and headed back to this manufacturer's facility and got a plug gauge and got set up with their QA folks. And I worked the entire night, and I plugged, and I know this, I plugged 4,012 holes, because there was an extra casting or two. And I plug gauged them, and I found 3 parts that were non-conforming out of these 1,000.
Wow.
And the head quality engineer came in, and the head of supply chain came in the morning when they came in at 7, and I was just finishing up. So I remember the gentleman walked in and looked at me and said, so did you get it done? I said, yep. And he said, how many were bad? I said, 3. All right. Good job, Fish. You did a good job. And that was the beginning of a relationship that went on for today even, where they understood that we were committed to taking care of their needs. And our company, you can argue in parts per million or whatever, you had 3 castings out of, over 1,000, and only 3 were bad, but it was what you had to do. And that's how you create relationships. You create trust because you follow up. And if you say you're going to take care of somebody, you do it. And I learned that example and, passed it along to a lot of our other fellows in our group. And I said, it is most important that we are valued as a good partner to our customer. And the other thing is, you learn that if somebody sends you a part and you make it in one process, and it's good, and the volumes go up, and you know that there's another process that can make this part less expensive. Now, what do? Do you keep on producing it at that? And if your companies or you don't have somebody in your portfolio, or do you say, look, I hate to lose any business, but you might want to consider this other process to be able to look at to be more cost effective. And when you do that, then they learn to trust you. And so relationships, I think the fundamental pillar is trust. And they trust you as how you do your business, is your word your word. And if things don't go right, do you stand in the breach and try to help and make sure things are right? And I think that's the relationship building you have is built on one word, and one word alone is trust. Yeah. And that's by doing the right thing and doing it consistently, and doing it when maybe it's not always the most economical thing for you, but you do still what is right. And that's what Polo does. And I think that's why Polo's been successful.
Well said, Steve. I almost want to end on that. It was so beautiful and clippable. But Anything else that you want to share on the difference between a transactional relationship and a true partnership? I think, you really hit the nail on the head there. And I think that was just a great way to talk about trust and the consistency that it takes to build that trust, and the way that, you can find value and create savings and create long-term reliability. It's really well said. Anything else you'd have to add to that transactional versus true partnership dynamic?
Well, the only thing I would say is that you have to make an evaluation of why you make a choice for a particular vendor, or like for us, a particular manufacturer. And we chose Polo because we looked at things, we talked to people, we got good recommendations, and then in our first projects we worked with them, they proved to be a trustworthy group. And so that was an election we had through in any relationship. They're going to be good and they're bad, and occasionally, to be honest, there's ugly. I mean, things sometimes go south, and how you fix it and make sure that you stay true to what your word is, and try to make sure your customer is taken care of, because you don't hit 1,000% on everything, but relationships are built on the overall, how do you react when things go wrong, and how do you react when things go right. And I think once again, you can go to Amazon and click and hit the button, and hopefully it arrives at your front porch. And when you open it up, is it what you think it is? Sometimes, most of the time it is. Sometimes it's not. But when you have a relational connection like you do, and custom engineered components like we supply with Polo, you have to be involved, and you have to be consistent, and you have to work through the good and the difficult. But if you do that, people that come back again and they value it, then you have a good relationship of trust. And I still think at the end of the day, the sweet taste of a good relationship is so much better than a transactional taste that could be sweet in the beginning but could turn bitter at the end. So I think that the longevity and how you approach business and how you approach your customers is what we have a responsibility for, and hopefully we see reciprocity from our customers. And in most instances we do. So that's the building of relationship and trust.
Yeah, that's great. And we have a saying, early bad news is good news. And that's recovering fast, because we've lived through a time of crazy change, more risks to supply chain than ever before. And that's what a strategic partner can do is get the right people around the table to solve the problem and move fast and respond. And it is great when you can have a true partnership and great relationships, because it's just fun to do business. It's fun to win together to support the growth and success of our customers. And it still exists out there. There's a lot of transactional deals, but there's, obviously a lot that needs to be put on paper and negotiated. But when you can do it and enjoy, working through those things with the people across the table, it just becomes incredibly rewarding too. So Steve, thanks for joining us on the Inspiring Innovation podcast. That was a lot of fun, and we appreciate all that Peterson does out in the field and being in with our customers and doing all that you guys do to solve problems and solutions for them.
Well, thanks much, Sean, and it's always a pleasure when you're able to talk about somebody that you, as I said, trust and have a good relationship, and that's what Peterson has with Polo. So,
yeah, for sure.
We appreciate you folks as well.
Thanks so much, Steve, and we'll see you in Anaheim.
Absolutely. Take care. Have a good day.